So this has been a heavy week for me. We had in our community someone pass away tragically, somebody we love. It's affected a lot of people. And so I'm preparing a memorial service for this person this week. And it was just kind of like looking back, and just this year alone, this is the 5th memorial service that I've done. It's, it's not even the end of summer yet. And there's just not a lot of words that you can say. I mean, it's just one of those things you don't know what to say. And I know many of you have experienced grief, but a lot of you haven't. And so I wanted to talk with you about grief today. There's a song that just came out a couple months ago on Ed Sheeran's new Subtract album. It's called Life Goes On. It's a really great song, kind of describes what grief is like. So I thought we'd talk about that today. So grief can be almost indescribable. For those of you who have experienced grief before, you know what I mean. It's hard to put your thoughts into words. It's even hard to formulate your thoughts. But again, for those of you who haven't experienced grief, I really want to talk with you, and it's about this song that Ed Sheeran wrote, Life Goes On. He describes it very well. In fact, I wrote some of the lyrics down, and I just want to read them to you, because I think maybe he even intentionally or unintentionally, he kind of walks through the 5 stages of grief kind of in visual imagery. Here's a line. He says near the beginning, "Hit like a train, I ran out of words." I mean, talking about like when you first hear the news of someone that you love passing away, it's just, it hits you. This would be kind of like the first stage of denial. Like, I don't have anything to say. I can't believe this is happening. Another line, "Waves came tumbling down. Storms will roll." This kind of reminds me of the second stage of grief, anger. It's just kind of that like burning, like this can't be, this is wrong, this shouldn't have happened. Tears in the rain. At this part of the song, he's kind of talking about, it's like I'm weeping for you, I'm crying for you, I'm mourning you, but it's raining, and so you can't even tell that. Meaning you've passed. He's speaking to the one that he loves. You've passed, and I just wish that you knew how much you were loved. I wish you knew how much I really cared about you. And that's kind of like the bargain of stage 3. If I could only go back and just be able to say this or do that, or if I could just trade places, that's a big part of it, is just this bargaining. Another line, "Sink like a stone," or "a constant gray in the clouds." Definitely stage 4 depression. And this one can last for many years. And that's why, again, for those of you who've never experienced grief, maybe you've watched somebody go through it, it's so important that you seek counsel. You talk with people who have gone through it before. You talk with people who can help you navigate each of these stages, especially your depression, because you can sink very low during that time. But it's really kind of the line that's just the main line of the song. It's kind of like stage 5, which is acceptance. Ed Sheeran's line is, "Easy come, hard go, then life goes on." And it's a sad reality. I mean, life goes on. For those who are not grieving, who kind of, you have somebody who's passed away that's kind of, in proximity to you relationally, but not super close. I mean, it's pretty amazing how quickly life goes on. But if you're the one who's experiencing that, it's kind of like, even within a couple weeks, you have other responsibilities. If you have kids, you have to get them to school, and you have to get them to practice. If you have a job, you're working, you still have other responsibilities. I mean, life just kind of keeps rolling, and that's part of why it can be so hard in times of depression, because you don't know how to continue on with your life and manage that grief. But it's the question. It's like the resounding question of the song that makes me think that Ed Sheeran really, he has some personal experience with grief. And this isn't the first song. I mean, from Visiting Hours to the Supermarket Flowers, I mean, he's clearly wrestled with grief personally, but it's this resounding question that I think is so good. He's speaking to the one that he loves who's passed on, wishing they could respond to him. He says, tell me how my life goes on when you're gone. Meaning, what does life after loss look like? And this is why I want to talk with you about that. You go through all 5 of those stages, and you often need help to do that, because there's healthy ways to navigate grief and there's unhealthy ways. And that's why I want you to know on this side of it. I mean, those of you who are going through grief right now, I hope this can be helpful. But those of you who have not experienced grief, I want you to know there are some unhealthy ways. It's not uncommon for your natural response to be just to bury your feelings. I'm just going to bury it. I'm going to keep moving on. And it's true, life goes on. I've got other stuff I've got to do. And so you just kind of keep trucking along. For others, you just detach totally, relationally, in other ways. I mean, you withdraw from everyone. You don't want to be around anyone. You don't want to talk about it. You detach. And maybe you're even resistant to loving again. And you feel like maybe you dishonor the one that you love if you were to love somebody else, and that just brings a lot of guilt, and you don't know what to do with that, so you just detach totally. Or another way, and this one's so common, is you try to numb your pain. Whether it's food, which is pretty common for me, just in any type of stressful situation, but especially grief, you try to numb yourself by eating or alcohol consumption or drugs. And clearly, intellectually, some of these, they're not healthy. And yet, if you experience grief and you experience, a lot of that depression in there, you don't really know what else to do. I mean, you want the pain to stop. That's the main thing. I just want the pain to stop. If there's not going to be a miracle, I just want the pain to stop. But the reality of that is that there are some really unhealthy ways of managing your grief. And if you bury your feelings, if you detach, if you try to numb the pain, you're going to make the pain worse. It's going to agitate it even more, and you're not going to be able to process your grief in a healthy way. And here's what I want to say. I'm not an expert on grief. I don't have it all figured out. But I know that you and I both are very likely to experience grief again in our future. I mean, I've walked through that. It's not something I want to walk through again. But here's the thing that you need to know. And this is why I want to talk to you like right now, so you can get this hopefully long before you're actually dealing with it. Death does not have to be final. I mean, death can feel so final. It does not have to be final. Do you know that? I mean, Jesus came, and this is so big, so important. Jesus came, and he defeated death. He predicted his own death and resurrection. 3 days later, he rose again. There's a lot of evidence for that. And the world totally changed. But it's important to know that Jesus defeated death. I mean, and you might say, well, if he has the power to defeat death, why does he not just raise people to life again? There is a much bigger plan for what God is doing in the world. But death, it's the final enemy that we have to face. But it's actually an invitation to trust Jesus, to believe in his resurrection, that he says, listen, I mean, if he can predict his own death and resurrection and pull it off, and we should listen to what he says. And what he says is, if you believe in me, I am going to prepare a place for you. If you believe in me, after you die, you will be raised to life again. I mean, we'll be raised. We will be not just floating in the sky on some clouds playing harps. There will be a new heaven and a new earth. There's going to be a time where Jesus comes again. And it's that reality that gives us so much hope. I mean, whether you're navigating death or maybe you're dealing with it in some way, to be able to hold on to that hope that though in this world there's going to be trouble, and though in this world there is going to be sorrow and grief, death, there is still hope. And so I just want you to hold on to that and that can actually move you. And I would encourage you, don't wait until that moment when life weighs down on you. Don't wait until that moment where you're not really sure which way is up anymore because you're dealing with all this pain. Trust Jesus now. Like, begin to have a relationship with him now. And not only will you be able to manage your grief, but you'll be able to manage and navigate life in a much healthier way. And that's what I hope for you.